Hi, I'm Angie from Rum River Art Center, and today I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the artist Wolf Kahn, and his pastel that he did on paper. He was born in 1927 in Germany, and when he was a little boy, he lived with his grandma because his dad was an orchestra director, and he was Jewish, and so in the 30s, he had to leave Germany. And so Wolf Kahn stayed with his grandma until he was 11. And then his grandma felt it wasn't unsafe anymore. And she put him on a train to go to England. And from England, then he went to the United States, and he met up with his father in 1940 and his brothers and sisters in New York. He attended the New York High School of Art and Music. And then he went to, he was in the Navy for a little bit. He went to a little bit of art school in New York, but he worked with Hans Hoffman for a while. And then he graduated from the University of Chicago with his art degree. And he was a teacher, but mainly an artist. And he married a woman named Emily Mason, who was also an artist in her own right. And they got married in Italy when he was over there on a Fulbright Scholarship. And he was fascinated with landscape. And that is what he did most of his paintings on. He, let me show you one. So here's one of his landscapes. He was also fascinated with color. And he would use color that didn't always necessarily go together in nature, but he used it in ways that just made his pieces really come alive. And so we're going to talk a little bit about color usage. And I'm going to show you one that really pops out here. There's this piece here. So he uses, look at all those oranges and those yellows and that line of pink. And he did these pastels not always in preparation for his oil paintings. He just liked to do them. He found it calming, and he lived in New York City for half the year, and the other half of the year he lived in Brattleboro, Vermont, which is where him and his wife would spend the summer months, looking at the beautiful landscape of Vermont. If you've never been there, it is quite beautiful. And here's another piece that I want to show you with the trees. So he liked to look at sunsets, and he liked to look at sunrise, and he just would put the color in his paintings. And then this one, I think, is more true to what it might look like in Vermont. The trees and the colors of the fall, they tended to come back in October when the colors were going back or were starting to change, and when all the people were coming into Vermont to see the beautiful trees. So here's another one with the color in the sky. And if you notice that there's purple in there, he really liked purple. He said that if he didn't know where to begin, he would pick up purple and just lay it down, and then everything would start going from there. He created during a time of what was called art expression. And a lot of people just did kind of abstract paintings. They played with color, but there wasn't any imagery in it. But he stuck to nature. He really wanted there to be nature in his paintings. So here's another one. So I found out about Wolf Kahn maybe a year ago, maybe a little less than a year ago, and I've just really been eating him up because I just love his work. And this book, just in case you really get interested, is fascinating because he does an essay on each of the writings. So he talks about his creative inspirations and the way he works and what he thinks about color. He's not really a color theorist. He doesn't put that in order. He just grabs the colors that feel for him. So also, unfortunately, he just died, but he had a very long life. He died in March 15, of 2020, and he just a genius in my eyes. So we are going to make a pastel drawing. So I'm going to use oil pastels. You can use oils or you can use chalk, whatever you'd like. And we're just going to do it on some paper, and I'm going to show you how I do it. I got so inspired the other day when I woke up and I saw the sun coming up that I ran outside with my pastels and paper, and I created this little oil pastel, and I did one the next day as well. So I just thought it was quite fun. So I have a couple boxes of different colors here, just to have things to pick from. Now I'm going to go from a sunrise in my mind versus one outside my front door. I have a pencil with an eraser because I tend to use the eraser to do some smearing, but fingers are good for that too. And so I'm just going to look at my colors and I'm going to see, what do I want? And I'm going to do Wolf Kahn, and I'm going to start with my purple. And I'm just going to lay some color on my piece of paper here. And what I like to do is I actually like to layer color on top of color because the blending of that is nice. And I've noticed that when I look at the sky when the sun is coming up in the morning, it's lighter up at the top, and then the more color is down at the bottom. So I'm going to make it a little bit lighter at the top, and I'm going to add a little lighter blue. And then I'm going to add some white. Whoops. And I see how I'm going to blend that a little bit. When you add color on color, it starts to blend. And I'm going to take my finger and I'm going to really rub it because I like it nice and creamy and smooth. And if I'm having a hard time, I just put my oil pastel in there. And there's clouds that come through the blue in the morning, so streaks of white is actually kind of nice because it looks like the clouds that are going through the sky. I always do my background first, and then I lay my trees on top of it. So we'll get to some trees. I'm going to add a little bit more purple. And then I'm going to put some orange in there. If your oil pastels are dirty with another color, you can take a tissue and just kind of wipe that off. That cleans it up. So I like to sit on my front porch. I got a couple old rocking chairs out there, and I have a little table that I put my oil pastels on, and I just sit there when it's warm enough. Hasn't been quite warm enough, and just see what comes. I like to watch the sun come, and when there's a color that catches my attention, then I start with that color. Now, some of you might not be morning people, especially with the sun coming up quite so early these days, but I love mornings, so I like to get up early. You can do this in the evening with the sun set. So now I'm going to put some trees on. And I noticed in the morning, it depends what time you get up, but you know, you get the color of the tree a lot sooner than you get the color of, or they're not as dark. Because in the evening when the sun goes down, there's this perfect time where it's really dark and the trees are black, but there's still some color behind it. It's my favorite time of day, actually. All right, so I'm going to make some trees. Now you don't have to be super detailed. I mean, Wolf Kahn, he just did some little, you know, marks. I get a little more detail because I really like trees. It's one of my favorite things to draw or play with. So I'm just gonna do some lines in here. I like trees that aren't necessarily straight in their shape. And I'm gonna do maybe, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 bigger trees, and then I'm gonna do some smaller ones. Maybe I'll do some branches. Sometimes I don't do branches. Sometimes I just like them straight without branches. So I'll do another big one over here. And you just play, you know? Don't have to worry about it being perfect. Too hard. It's just more about moving the oil around or the pastel around. If you're using chalk, I've never done this with chalk pastels, but you can give it a try. Let me know how it works. All right, now the foreground here, the foreground is leaves. I got a ton of like dead, you know, the leaves that fell from the fall. So I'm just gonna add some of this color here, and then I'm gonna make it look a little leafy. Thing with pastels is it just, you can blend over it if it's not the way you want it to look. I'm going to add another couple colors on top here just to give it a layer look. Probably add a few more trees when I'm done with this. I kind of always start with the top, and then I put a little bit of the main subject, and then I do the foreground. You know, little dabs of color like the Impressionists used, you know, to create a scene. It doesn't have to all be perfectly laid out. You know, it just gives the illusion of what you're working with. Blend that a little bit there. And you might have other tools that you like using. Sometimes people use other paper to smear the pastels, or a tissue, or a smudging stick. Right, now I'm gonna look at my trees a little bit more. I like there to be knots in my trees, so keep the black and add some details, add some details. Sorry, I'm creating and trying to talk at the same time. Add a nice big opening in the tree. There's a lot of trees in my yard that have big old knots in them, which I love. I look at these things. I look at the details of the trees. You know, there's little wildflowers coming up. I look at the petals. You know, art is about seeing, you know, when you want to capture something, you want to look at details. You know, what inspires you? Is it the color? Is it, you know, the texture, the shape? Is it comparing a couple different things together and what that looks like? Is it shadows or reflections? You know, as creative beings, it's good to look at all of these things and to see, you know, what inspires you, know what inspires you. You know, my grandma, when I was a little girl, would take me out and we would look at bugs. You know, I'm a lover of bugs. You know, I love looking at the details and how they're created and their legs and all this stuff. And so, you know, when you're out going for walks, you know, just kind of bend down and look at some of those details in nature. And those things are quite inspiring that you can capture and put into your artwork. You can blend these edges smoother if you want. I don't mind them being a little fuzzy because, you know, in the morning when the light's just coming up, everything looks kind of fuzzy, especially if you're not a morning person. So there's my finished piece. I'll probably work on it a little bit more maybe, but I'm pretty happy with it. So I want to thank you for joining me. This is my first time doing a lesson this way. So here's my wolf Kahn. And if you do one, why don't you send it over to us at Rum River Art Center and we can put it on our blog. If you want to know a little bit more about Wolf Kahn, check the blog. I did a little bit more history on him. So I appreciate you, taking the time to watch this and be creative with me.